if the symptoms you are living with in your body are not random, broken, or even permanent, but intelligent signals asking to be listened to. And it doesn't matter what kind of symptoms you have. In this episode of the Expansion Room, I am joined by energy healer and author Dayna Wylder for a powerful conversation on how unseen forces in our bodies, like emotion, energy, even our nervous system and how it's regulated, directly shape our physical health. And together we'll explore how healing happens when the body feels safe enough to reorganize itself from disorganization, and how reconnecting to your body can really unlock profound transformation. So let's dive in. Dayna, welcome. I am so glad you're here for this conversation. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, how you got into this line of work, and then we'll go further.
And first, I'd like to just thank you for having me here and for creating this kind of a space, because I think everybody really needs this in the world right now, is to have places where we can have honest conversations about what real healing looks like, about things that are outside maybe of just regular convention. And I think that's where my path led me. So I, to give the quick version, I have multiple sclerosis, which I've had now for almost 20 years. And that's a long journey for me to get there. So I would say it started really honestly from the time I can remember, even younger than remembering, because I had a vagus nerve dysfunction as a toddler and used to pass out every time I was scared or had any anxiety. And there was trauma even starting from those young years. And that followed me through into an abusive marriage, into addiction, into escapism. And all of that toxic emotions, behaviors, and then resultant actions I took in life really created my body and my mind to stop communicating, both figuratively and literally. Because with MS, it's actually a disconnection now between mind and body, where the nervous system attacks itself. So your ability for your body to sense its environment and to send meaningful information to the brain, and for the brain to then organize and make sense of what you're going to do as far as movement, speech, or any kind of physical activity. And so the MS for me, I think there was a lot of signs maybe it was coming, but I just kind of pushed through when I was young. So those couple times in the shower where I closed my eyes and fell over, I chalked it up to maybe that's an ear infection. Maybe I didn't sleep good. Maybe I'm hungover. And it wasn't really until my son passed away, and that was in the height of my abusive marriage, obviously made worse by what had just happened to us, that I lost vision, and I started losing sensation, and then ended up with vertigo as well. So, the first times where I'm like, I can't really go to work, I can't really function that well. And I think that's when the diagnosis finally came. It was a hard-fought diagnosis, which is a strange thing to be hoping that something's wrong with you. But when people ignore you and when you know there's something wrong, there's some kind of validation in the diagnosis. But it's a double-edged sword, because then you can identify with that diagnosis and then become attached to everything that comes with it, which there's a lot of downside to that too.
Absolutely. I would agree with that for sure. Yeah. And how did you find healing for yourself in this process? Because I definitely know that experience of trying to find out what's wrong with you. Eventually I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, but it took some years to figure out what in the world was going on for me. And then there was a journey towards into healing. So how was that journey for you into healing?
So it's actually easy to look back and give like a storyline for that, because it matches actually what I wrote about in my book, which kind of came full circle because yoga was my original thing I started. So when I first got diagnosed, I think my saving grace was I never really believed what they told me. I always knew that I believed I could heal myself and that I wasn't going to take the conventional path. And at least the one thing about all those young years of my life where I was kind of a wild child was all that exploration and adventure really did make me curious and open minded and a bit of a risk taker. So I was like, I'm going to figure this out myself. And I followed, even though not conventional, because I'm still, going to try meditating. I'm going to do diet. I'm going to do some alternative type of things compared to taking pharmacy drugs. But I still started in the physical body. So I still very much was into the materialist worldview, Newtonian physics, where everything is just our physical body. So I was doing diet and I was doing exercise, including yoga. Yoga very much, though, as like just the asanas and poses. There was no spiritual practice to it. And even the meditation was still a thing I was just doing. I don't know if I was really meditating as an inward journey as much as another thing to check off my list of like, okay, I ate organics today. I went for a walk. I did all these things I said I was going to do. And I got to some point where that didn't work anymore, it plateaued. And I wouldn't say it wasn't beneficial. We are a physical body. And so we need the diet, we need the exercise. That's all important to do. But the first time I came across pulse magnetic field therapy, which was just a beautiful synchronicity, when that energy came into my body, it was like the lights turned back on. And all of a sudden, I literally could see the clouds outside. I could read the signs. And I'm not a depressive kind of person. I've always been optimistic my whole life. But I guess that relapse that I was having, which was the real turning point of the MS, I couldn't walk, couldn't see, couldn't drive, couldn't care for myself. And so when I laid on that machine, all of a sudden I noticed that I'm like looking at this sky and thinking it's so beautiful out. I thought, oh, that's really nice. I haven't felt like that in so long. Because our body doesn't expend energy on happiness when it's having such a hard time just doing the basic functions of regulating the temperature, of trying to like move itself, all the things I was struggling with. So energy came next. And then I started just diving into all energy tools, microcurrents, photobiomodulation, sound healing, anything I could do to bring external energy in. But again, I reached a plateau. Because even if you have the energy which you need to govern the biochemistry of the body, so all of the things I do are not in opposition to medical advice or anything else people are doing. It's another layer. It's just adding another lens to it. But I ended up getting to the point where I needed the information field to be corrected. Because why wasn't my energy sustaining? Why wasn't I able to create my own energy? And then when I started to really dive into, well, what are the ways in which we leak our energy? And this is when I got into the mind frame, into emotions and nervous system regulation, and even back to the body, because somatic release and breath work, it is a physical in the body, but it's releasing that tension and the stored trauma and the things that are kind of deeper than just, going to the gym to exercise. And so once I got that information piece right, and I started to plug in all those energy leaks, then that's when the real healing started to happen. And I don't know how, out there we want to get with it, but really when I got to the end, once I took some of those layers of the veil off, the spirituality really touched me then. And for the first time, I really had a moment where I could have the quietness to hear my higher self speak to me. And then I realigned my entire purpose, changed careers, and now I help other people. And I went back from corporate back to creative endeavors, and I feel so aligned now. And joy brings energy. So now instead of being victimized by my disease, I use it as a stepping stone into some meaning, and that joy and that purpose energized me.
Beautiful, beautiful. That is quite a journey that you've been on. And I'm thinking, like, because you mentioned body work and paying attention and taking care of your body, and then working on energy and the mind, and then spirit, right? So in a lot of ways, you went from, as a yoga teacher, we talk about the 5 koshas, right? So body, energy, moving into the mind, moving into spirit. And so your journey really led you inward. And so I wonder how, from your perspective, how does the mind, body, spirit connection influence both illness and then the healing of the illness?
Well, I think that when we think about, and sometimes people don't really understand some of the words that we toss out there, and people hear subtle body and light body and energy body. And I really do think it's like a simple kind of a thing when we do just think about, our the chakras in our body, or which is our nervous system. Really, when you think about these energy vortexes starting in your tailbone and coming up into your crown, it's covering almost this layer of the koshas too, where we're thinking about our root in the material body. And as we're moving up and we're getting into the energy body, our solar plexus, the drive, the sun, yellow, right? And then we're moving into our heart space, which is, our nervous system, and it's our emotions. We're getting up into the third eye, and this is now going to be our intellect and our wisdom and our discernment. And then the spirit on the top. And when we kind of have this channel, it works both ways. If we start poking holes at some of it and we have, layers that we haven't paid attention to. So for some of us, injury comes because of an accident. And so this just really is something in the physical body. You can go to the physical body just to heal. But some of us got into this, and very much for myself, through emotional dysregulation and trauma. So knowing now that a lot of what came downstream into my physical body was a result of the emotional turmoil and the holding on to anger, resentment, the fear, and then the thought loops that were created. So it's like once we create a worldview we can't really help some of that limiting beliefs, because a lot of it happens when we're under 7 in theta wave, which is like self-hypnosis and hypnosis by society. And we receive a lot of these limiting beliefs, and then we carry them with us. And our nervous system will scan the environment to find ways in which that we will prove that to be true. Because even when we do things that are negative for us, they're known to us and they're habitual. And it's, in a way, energy preserving to do autopilot habitual behaviors, even if they're self-destructive. So we get into these thought loops then that it's like our beliefs give context to the content of our life. And as we give that meaning, and it could be negative or positive, but for those of us that are ill, there tends to be quite a bit of negative things rolling around in there. And then that turns into the way we think about things, the way we frame them, and how we think about things turns into an emotion. And then the emotion then is going to turn into the biochemistry in the body. And in this way, you don't separate. When we talk about mind, body as two separate things, it's not really possible. So if what you have as a problem is in the emotional, or maybe it's a mental anxiety, maybe it's a spiritual disconnection, but as that alignment in your body starts to have cracks in it, and it can't flow. So like a torus field of energy, we need the light and the energy to come down to us, bounce back up, circle around us. Energy needs to be in motion. Like in Chinese medicine, the meridians, it's always about the flow and blocking the stagnation. Same thing in yoga. We want the prana to move through our nadis. So we're always thinking about how to release, whether it's emotions, thinking, or physical tension. And so you get sick because one of these things is not being paid attention to, or it's out disharmonious. And we get back into flow by figuring out which parts we need to work on, which things are out of balance. And once that happens, it's like it lights you back up. And once you light back up, then all the things fall back into place.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful way that our bodies are actually designed to work. And when we do the work, the energy work, the physical work, the spiritual work to heal, we get back to what we were designed to be, and so thank you for that explanation. So it sounds like then unresolved emotional patterns and traumas can physically manifest as symptoms of dis-ease in our bodies, which I know certainly was my experience as well. And I've known a number of people I've worked with over the years with cancer. And one of the things that is now more widely talked about is what we hold on to emotionally can turn back on us and turn out to be other health issues, other things like cancer, even diabetes, heart disease, and so forth, especially if we have an experience or history of adverse childhood experiences, ACE. And so in the studies that they've done over our childhood traumas, which the number of people that have experienced them is high in our society, there is that 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, health issues that develop can actually be traced back because the percentage of people who have experienced trauma in their lives are also the same people that develop these dis-eases later in their lives. So thank you for sharing that. In your process of healing yourself, changing your life, changing your career to helping people, how did you, what I guess aspects of the healing process did you start to work with people on?
Yeah, so I mean, one, when you were talking about the emotions and how they get stuck in the body and they can lead to these different ailments, I use bioresonance scanning. And bioresonance is a way in which we can, either using somebody's voice or using a device where maybe their hand is on it, where we're picking up the frequency. It's a way to look into the body and see what is that archetype, the blueprint of the body, the frequencies coming out. What is it showing us? And it often shows an emotion, or it could be an organ system. It could be a process within the body, even just down to just a single cell showing up as something is out of balance. And it is really interesting to me that in Chinese medicine, and it is based a lot on Chinese medicine model, that they link all the organs with a yin and a yang. So the yin organ is like a thicker, heavier one, and then the yang ones are hollow space. And so I'll take even just the heart as an example. So the heart is the yin one, it's a thicker muscle. And then the yang association is the small intestine. And it's linked with either love and compassion or resentment. And so when I'm scanning somebody, I can see sometimes when they're having an issue in one of these areas, how it might relate to an emotional blockage that they have. And, you know, it's interesting in bioenergetics when we look at these patterns of disease in the body and how it actually manifests, that we think about it like in germination theory. So when a baby is a fetus and it's first in utero, because that's really our first environment, our first energetic terrain, when the sound that we're hearing is our mother's heartbeat, and, you know, the dissonant frequencies maybe of, you know, moves or loss of a job or grieving or whatever can happen to our mom in pregnancy, or joy too, because I mean, it's not always bad news, right? Sometimes beautiful things are happening there. But whatever in the biofield is growing at that time, they all link up energetically with matching frequencies. And that's how you have the pairing of yin and yang organs, as well as thinking like in the liver, it's also matched to eyes. And that's because the eyes were developing at the same time as the liver and the gallbladder. So they all have an energy frequency. So a lot of times when I see patients that will come with a specific cancer in the body, or they'll have had, again, an organ transplant or something removed, it's often really easy to pick up things that might have happened to them. And it's going to be related now to this energetic frequency in the body and what came out of harmony, and then playing the corrected frequency back into the body and working with them on an emotional and energetic spiritual level to maybe remedy whatever emotional thing that led to that part of the body. And what I find interesting about that is even for MS, and I'm not sure with fibromyalgia, I haven't really looked into that one, but MS has a kind of a subset of personality types of people who go on to develop MS. And it tends to be like A-type, overachiever, doers, perfectionists, people that are always striving. And one of the interesting things I found once I got into this higher part of like the mindset and the parts integration and adverse childhood events, once I started looking at my energetic patterns, it kind of became clear to me. And I hope that other people, as they do this work for themselves, they'll start to see their own energetic patterns, because that first awareness is what eventually leads us to be able to dissolve it later. But I grew up with addiction. And so when you have addicts in your life, you tend to always be the adult and you're trying to control the chaos and you're managing them. And I went straight from there to an abuser who now I'm managing his emotions and his needs. And all throughout this time, I don't have any needs. Nothing about me matters. It's all just me managing everybody all the time. And in the young years, I might have had bad, unhealthy habits like drugs and alcohol. I stopped all of that later in life and I thought I was doing better, but I was still overachieving and overdoing, and it was always around the next corner. And if I get one more degree and I do, just like I said about meditating, if I meditate and I eat the organics and check, everything will be good. But it's still this managing a disease. And then it kind of dawned on me one day, is my MS maybe another way for that manager part of me to have a job to do for the rest of my life? Because the MS, if it's chronic, and if it's always my companion and they say it's progressive and it's, permanent, is that part of me now have a built-in job? Because otherwise it was becoming obsolete because I didn't have any problems anymore as I got older. And once I started to think about that, it changed my relationship with my symptoms, my body, and the MS. And I don't try to necessarily overcome any of it anymore. It's more of a surrender into it, like when we were saying with the labels and the diagnosis. At some point, it's beneficial to be aware of it, but at some point, clinging to the identity of it becomes its own sort of problem, and pushing against and resisting. Because when we're talking about the energy and the meridians and the chakras, you want flow. And flow means you're going to let go of something when it doesn't serve you anymore.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is a powerful question you asked. And I've heard someone else ask a similar question, or a question in the same vein. It's almost like the ego mind, or that part of yourself, needs to have something, right? The label gives that part of your brain something to kind of gnaw on or chew on or identify with. So yeah, it sounds like there was for you an easing back.
Yeah, well, the part of you, so we call it in neurolinguistic programming a secondary gain, where there's this little piece of you because none of us really will do an action and a behavior over and over unless we get some benefit out of it. And this is in no way to blame anybody for their illness, because clearly, consciously, none of us would choose it. I would never have chose that I wanted to be sick. But
Exactly.
what am I still getting out of maybe some benefit? Because energetically, I haven't let go of something, and that's what's manifesting continually in the body. And so there's a little bit of just when we're talking about the ACE, childhood events, going back and looking at that inner child and finding a place to forgive them and to make space and to hold them. Because, time and space really is just as big of an illusion as our body is. So we can go back and rewrite our timeline, and that carries forward into our future and across generations and timelines. And so going back, and I went back to that inner child of mine, and if she didn't get held the way she needed to, I'll hold her and I'll take care of her. And at the same time, my future self, I want that future self to be proud of the current me too, which means the current me has to act in accordance with the best interests of my future self. Yes. And in all of those ways, you start to give yourself permission to just be okay with yourself and to not be so hard on yourself. We're always doing the best that we can at the time that we're doing it. And so, but at the same time, it's like a balance again, too, because we don't want to necessarily stop taking action on getting better. We do want to move forward and have a goal of like, I'm going to still eat the diet, and I'm going to do the exercise, and I'm going to do the mind work and the body work. But we're also going to take some of the pressure off about the perfectionism and the doing and the outcome. Where if one day we wake up and the pain is a little bit more than it was yesterday, to not get so stressed out about it, to not identify with it so much, to just go, okay, maybe I'm just a little bit tired today, just have a nap maybe, right? Instead of getting stressed out again and saying, oh, I screwed up, failed on the diet, oh, I didn't do this. And then you're pushing against something, and all of that negative resistance is not a place that is conducive for healing.
Absolutely. And then all that negative resistance then affects your nervous system, which can become a little bit dysregulated, which then adds to whatever pain you might be experiencing. So that easing back is so important. Yeah, so important. Okay. So in thinking about kind of the nervous system and regulation, how might someone who is living with disease, a diagnosis of any kind, right, um, tune into their nervous system in particular in order to be as regulated um, as throughout their day as they possibly can be?
I can think of a few different really easy, accessible ways to do that. And one I give to clients when I see them that is when that, especially ones that come with a lot of anxiety, because anxiety is linked to all of the pain and the disease and the
Yes,
inflammation. But is,
absolutely.
I call it 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you're just going to take a moment to just look around and think, what are 5 things I can see? What are 4 things I can hear? 3 things that I can touch, 2 things I can smell, and 1 thing that I can think or intuit. And it's just a moment to just look around because we get so stuck sometimes in rumination, going forward and worrying and being fearful and replaying scenarios in our head that take us out of the present moment. And I would say almost 99 or even more percentage of the time, the current moment is safe. So even in the case when my MS was really at its worst and I was needing care and to be carried and fed, most of the time I was just sitting on the couch or laying on the floor meditating. I was safe, right? And that moment, even when you first wake up in bed and the blankets are on you and you're cozy and you haven't felt your pain yet or you haven't tried to move your body yet, you're safe. You're okay in that moment. So if you can just kind of stay in those moments and bring yourself back as frequently as possible, which the next thing I would suggest for people is gratitude. And this one is such an easy and accessible thing to do because it's free. You can do it at any time. In my family, I like to do it at dinner time. And this is like a multiple fold. And for some people, if you're religious, maybe this is grace or prayer at dinner. My family, we do gratitude because this is one I can get everyone to agree on. And we do 5 things we're grateful for. And in the beginning, it was really like pulling teeth because I have teenage kids. And normally we would all come home and this was the time to fight and to nag and for everyone to unload their bad day. So when we started doing the gratitude, after a while we started interrupting each other, and not out of rudeness, but because we were inspired by somebody else's idea. And we'd be like, "Oh, wait, I'm so grateful for this too." And I just thought, it just shifted the energy. And when talking about the nervous system, we are not only now digesting our day, our emotions, our thoughts, but we're going to digest our food better.
Yes.
Because if we can calm our nervous system down and we go into rest and digest, this is where we
Mm-hmm.
build our immune system and we digest, and this is where we do cellular repair. And so, all the things the body needs to do, it feels safe enough to do it. And what a beautiful time to do it right when you're about to assimilate, also on the biochemistry level, to just kind of pair everything in the nervous system. And then I know with
Such
yoga
a
for you
beautiful
too, I'm going to
practice.
give the last one, which is always breath work,
Yeah.
right? Like your nervous system, it's a two-way street. So if your body is in pain or it's ill or it's, fearful, like it will gasp, it'll hold breath, it'll be tense.
Yep.
If your mind is anxious, it'll tell the body to tense up. But at the same time, you can have another communication where your mind is going to calm yourself down, which will send safety signals to the body to diaphragmatically breathe, to calm down. You can do somatic work, fascia release, yoga, qigong, anything that comes now from the body communicating up to the brain saying, take a deeper breath, everything is okay. And
Yeah.
the breathing is free, right? Gratitude is free.
It
And so
is.
is, just paying attention around you, just coming back to present moment.
Beautiful. That's exactly it. Coming back to present moment, because when we've experienced trauma, we wind up living in the past, almost. It's like we can't be fully present for our physical existence or our physical lives. And so it does, all of those practices you mentioned does help us to come back to feet planted here in the now, where
Yeah, and
in most cases, as you said, we're safe.
another practice I started using myself, and now I've shared with other people too, is to become aware of what is the first thought you think when you wake up.
Yes, I have been practicing that lately.
Yeah, and you know what?
Yeah,
It's telling in the beginning because I
it
think that the
is.
first thing I was thinking before was instantly trying to like reach out and touch the wall for my balance. And so the very
Mm,
first thought I was obviously thinking is I'm off balance, and, I'm not okay. And I
yeah.
need the safety of like touching the wall to orient myself again. And so I really started working on like, no, what like have like an empowering belief when you first wake up in the morning and set the intention right for your whole day. Because it matters so much, like how we think about things and how we frame things. And
Hmm.
and I think you'll start to notice your patterns too, right? And even maybe what actions you need to take, because sometimes if the thought is reoccurring over and over, sometimes that's actually a message to you that you need to act differently in life. So either you need to
Absolutely.
reframe something if you're not willing to change it, or you need to
Hmm.
change whatever it is that's going on in your life. But just becoming again aware of what is kind of rolling around in your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too many of us start the day without that awareness. And so our thoughts, like I like to say to my clients in my counseling practice, don't let your thoughts drag you down the street, you know? Don't allow them to drag you. You are in control of your thoughts. And so it starts in the morning.
And also realizing that just because you think a thought or feel a feeling doesn't make it true.
That's right.
Like most of the things that we think about are just habitual or the same thoughts over and over. And just because it
Hmm.
comes to your mind doesn't mean you have to attach to it, believe it, or follow it. And this is when I was doing the energy leaks in my past, and I was thinking about how to retain energy in the body. And I always thought about this one example, which was so easy to illustrate to people because it didn't have to be a negative loop necessarily
Hmm.
where you're ruminating on a big traumatic event. It could be something as simple as you think to yourself, what am I going to have for dinner tonight?
Hmm.
And if you thought that thought and you thought, I'm going to make chicken tonight, and you left it there is no energy expenditure beyond that one thought. But if
Right.
that thought turns into, oh, I didn't defrost anything, but actually then I need to stop at the store. Oh, you know what? But that route has traffic on it. You know what? Why am I going to the store again? Why isn't it my partner? Did somebody unload the dishwasher? They never do it. I'm going to come. And then you're like 20 thoughts, 200 thoughts later, and
Yep,
nothing
drag
has
down the street.
changed. Yeah, nothing has changed about the fact that you're going to either make chicken for dinner or you're not because
Right.
it wasn't defrosted or you didn't go to the store or whatever reason. Either way, you could have saved so much mental energy if you just had the one thought and then just stopped and then you waited until the action came about and you either made chicken or you didn't.
There
But
you go.
because we spend so much time in this mental activity, it's energy that we're not giving to the body to heal. It's
Yeah.
energy that we're not giving to our spirit to speak and communicate to us because we're
Mhm.
just taxing everything that we have on this mental chatter.
Yes, indeed. I recently started looking at that with my own thinking and have tagged it as like conflict mind in the sense that you start with that original question and then you suddenly find yourself going down a rabbit hole, right? Or you have a thought about someone and all of a sudden you find yourself in an argument in your mind. If that person says this next time, I'm going to say this, 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 and that, and this is what I'm going to do. Like all of a sudden, nothing has changed. You're in your car driving, or you're sitting at your desk, or whatever it is, but you've started with the thought and allowed yourself to go down this path that does not yield you anything good or positive.
Yeah, and this is why going back to those practices like breath work or
Yep.
just paying attention to something around you, because
Yeah.
it really does snap you back in to being
Absolutely.
embodied, right? In
Yeah.
yourself and in that moment of that things usually are just okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, how do people best reclaim the body as an ally? Because really, we're talking about, because in our society, we look at symptoms as such a bother at minimum, or to really mean something is wrong and diagnosable, right? And if we treat it as our bodies and therefore the symptoms that pop up as more information, then we could see our bodies as allies. And so, what does it take to rebuild trust in our bodies?
Well, I think making space to listen and to be uncomfortable, because the mind speaks in language, and it speaks in, analytics, categorizing, judgments, right? Which serves, because we need our ego, we need that mind to navigate life. But we just talked about, we overvalue it and we let it take dominance. And so then the subconscious and the body, they take a back seat. And that's a place where creativity comes in, where problems can be resolved, where we can reach resolution, where we make space. It's the in-between objects. It's the ether on this side. And I think when we make room for the body to be able to listen and to actually ask, like, what is it trying to tell me? So in the case, like, basic examples everybody could relate to, you get a fever. We don't always need to take an Advil or to take something to break the fever. The fever is beneficial. It's burning off the virus. Yep. Now, that being said, it's always you have to do a cost benefit ratio, because maybe if your child has a really high fever and they can't sleep at night, well, sleep is a priority. Maybe that's the moment you might then break the fever for bed. Same thing, like you have a headache. Instead of instantly grabbing something for it, maybe do you need to drink more water? Maybe is it tension? Maybe you need to take some deeper breaths, roll your shoulders. Maybe you need to step away from your desk or this person or situation. And on a more like energetic, mirrored kind of level, when I looked at my own MS, one of the things I always wondered is like, so I have ataxia, which is that I can't like put my body where there's no proprioception, so I can't tell where my body is in space. So if I go to reach for something, I might knock it over. I go to step, but my foot doesn't land where I want it to. And then when you start to think, well, what might that be saying about me, that I'm off balance, I don't know where I'm going next, that I don't feel sure-footed, that the carpet might be ripped out from underneath me. Like there's all of these analogies and these metaphors and things that rise up thinking, why might my body not feel confident moving forward? And so maybe that's because I'm busy changing my career, or the world was in upheaval, or there's too much political uncertainty, or maybe I'm worrying about these things or my place in the world, and maybe it's manifesting physically. And recently I had a new one that just kind of came to me, because even though I've written books and I've been healing people and I've been on this journey, I still am in an evolution myself, and I still learn new things. And MS, there's this symptom called clonus, where your leg bounces. And it generally happens if you feel like very fatigued or heat sensitive or something. The nervous system is just kind of out of whack. And so it happens to me a lot if I've done like a lot of housework, or I'm tired and then I've had a hot shower. And I tend to notice this is the time it starts to trigger. And normally when I'm getting out and drying myself, my leg will start to bounce. And previously in the past, it made me anxious and it made me uncomfortable, and I would hold my leg down and stop the bouncing. But in the last few months, I was like, I'm doing tremor release therapy on my floor on purpose, where I'm shaking to release things. But yet when my body's actually doing it on its own, I'm stopping it. So when my mind says I'm ready to shake, I'm going to lay down on the floor and I'm initiating shaking. But when my body is saying to me, I want to shake right now, I'm stopping it.
Right.
So, right. And then all of a sudden I was like, okay, well, don't do that anymore. From now on, when it starts to shake, I've just been sitting down and I'm like, whether this is 1 second, 10 minutes, I'm just going to let it shake. And I physically talk out loud to it. And I think, this is the nervous system going through a stress release pattern.
That's right.
And it's finally resolving the stress, just like an animal shakes when, something bad happens. And so I'm like, just let it shake. And I talk to it and I think, whatever you need to let go of, I'm here. And, a lot of trauma, they say, it's not even just the trauma itself or that event, but it's who got witnessed in their trauma. So if you were traumatized, but you had somebody witness it, and they kind of held you and held space for you, and they gave you a soft place, the trauma didn't really stay in the body as much as it happened to people who had to do the trauma alone. Yes. And in my life, I did a lot of the trauma alone. And then even when you talk about domestic violence, it's so shameful, especially as like a doing kind of, woman, to say I allowed myself to be abused for 15 years. So I didn't want to talk about it even. I really didn't want anyone to even witness it. Yeah. So when I'm in this moment now, my leg is bouncing, I'm holding myself now. And sometimes I actually even hold myself and I'm like, I'm watching you now. I'm here with you, and I'm going to let you shake for as long as you need to shake. And it's so amazing how the shaking gradually, before it would just start and stop, and now it has this beautiful, it gets like more rhythmic and softer, and it makes like a gentle gradual decline. Like it was like, finally going, ah, and like
Yeah.
it's letting out.
Yeah.
So I think people need to do that. You need to make space for your body. And sometimes it is uncomfortable. And the emotions are sometimes uncomfortable. But you don't always need to avoid it. You just need to let it move through you. Feel it,
Absolutely.
express it, and let go of it.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. I think you're right. Yeah, too many people they don't they resist the body's natural way of releasing things. One of my favorite experiences when I have facilitated a psychedelic journey for someone who has experienced trauma in their past is a physical shaking that some people go through. Like just in that space, their body releases, a symptom comes up for release, and they shake for a number of, few minutes or 10 minutes just to release. And they're surprised. They're very
Yeah.
surprised, but the body knows exactly what it needs.
And it's odd for me because I've paid attention to this too. Sometimes after the shake, I feel exhausted. And it's like my nervous system finally feels safe enough to just rest. And then sometimes I shake and I feel energized, like I let something go of good. And I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. Even though I was just tired a minute ago from everything I just did, like I'm all of a sudden energized. And then respecting that too, right? Like
Yeah.
even the response you get after whatever has happened to you, and not fighting against any of it. It's all just part of the journey and part of the experience.
Right. It's like moving from disconnection to embodiment. That's the process. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And so, are there any other like small daily practices that you feel like would be a benefit for people to basically kind of restore that nervous system regulation or to better listen to their bodies and what's going on inwardly for them?
Well, because I do sound healing, so
Uh,
sound is a favorite of mine. And
yes.
not everybody can make it out to sound bath and other things because there is a cost and a travel for those things. But the most powerful sound healing tool that we have is our own voice.
Yes.
And and not even just in the way I'm about to explain as a practice, but just in general, that we should be very mindful of the words we speak to ourselves and to other people, because those
Yes.
words are also vibration, they're also frequency, and they hold weight.
Yes,
But
they
the
do.
practice I'm
I
going to
call it
give,
spell casting.
it
That's what
is,
I
yeah.
call it.
Well, and you know what? This is how come when I teach yoga, I always use the Sanskrit words along with the English words, is because I think that not only does it honor the legacy and the heritage, but it has a lot of power. Those original symbols and those words, they create the geometry and the structure of reality, and so
Yeah.
they are important. But this is a practice so people can take something tangible, which is often easier than controlling the stream of thoughts, because I know that's a hard point for most people. But to hum or to do mantra or chanting. And humming's probably the easiest one because you don't have to tone it. There's not anything to remember as far as what, Sanskrit word or what mantra to say. You just hum. And humming now, it entrains the body. So it can bring your brain back into like alpha state, or maybe even getting into theta state. And so it's really helping to vibrate the cells in the body, but also then from your brain stem down your vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve goes down into the enteric nervous system. So this is where our digestion and our heart rate and all of these other processes in the body are going on. So again, it's a beautiful symphony and synchronizing between the brain and the body and creating that heart and the head coherence, which is so important for healing. And you can hum any tune as often as you want. I like to hum to my dog. And even when I talk to her, everything is like sing song, like it's all like a little tune because it makes me happy. It's hard to hum and be in a bad mood.
That is true.
Yeah, it's right. And even shaking, when I do shaking in my yoga classes, like I
Hmm.
don't think that I can stand up in the front of the room and bounce around like that and then not get a smile. Like ecstatic dancing or tribal dancing kind of has that same effect where you're just when
Right.
you move your body in this way, even if it's kind of silly, it's
Hmm.
hard not to just be happy. And then,
That's
if you
right.
want to take it a step further besides just humming, actually doing vowel toning that go with the chakras or
Yes.
the Baja seed sounds, like, and all of those things, like, if anyone doesn't know what that is, you can go to YouTube or to the internet and you can look up and, you can find these things everywhere. And that's a really beautiful way to go from the mind into the body because you're actually vibrating your body at the cellular level. So you're embodying the sound and you're your own instrument of healing.
Wonderful. That is those, yes, those hands down. Humming is such a beautiful thing. It just, I sometimes a hum just starts to come up, and we should allow them to come up and through us, and it just balance. I don't know what it is. As you described it there, that's the, of course, the science part of it, but just my intuition when it happens, it's speaking. Something about the humming speaks to me.
I
And
took
so
a yoga vocal
yeah,
course recently,
yeah,
and especially I was thinking because now that I'm in the front of the room hosting, I have to be
right.
the one that sets the tone for everybody to
Yep.
bring back to me. So I was like, well, I better get over the fact that I think I can't sing and that I can't, hold a tune. And so I took this class, and one of the things I learned was when you just like open your mouth more as you make a sound, like open the throat, wow, can you ever bellow out and hold a note differently? And so now I'm like, no embarrassment, no, I'm not holding anything back. I just
Yeah,
let it out there. And it's beautiful actually to be at the front of the room and have everybody tone back at me because
yeah.
it's like being like a conductor in an orchestra or something. Like I can feel everybody all in training and creating coherence between that first
In the
pitch to the
space.
end. They all start to like come together to make one
Absolutely.
consistent tone. And that's like a group synchronicity and group healing.
Yeah. And we need more of that. We need so much more of that right now. And so that was one of the things that I remembered reading that people missed during COVID was the getting together to sing, right? In so many spiritual communities, people got together on a regular basis to sing together, to chant together, to do hymns together, whatever the tradition is, and that was lost, and people felt it who usually would
Yeah, well, even just
participate
being
in that.
within each other's 6 feet space, because that's where our nervous systems regulate. Like
That's
we can
right.
feel each other's auras and our biofields, and
Yeah.
it's and I love this too because it's amazing that we have technology and you can like meet with people
Yes.
through the internet. It's amazing,
Yes.
but nothing replaces like when you hug somebody or you
Yeah.
hold them and you get like that. Your hearts are actually co-regulating to each other.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, thank you. We'll end it right there. That's perfect. Thank you, Dana. This has been a wonderful conversation. I think our listeners will, you know, really begin to, I hope, tie all the pieces together of how to listen inwardly to their bodies and to have a little bit more compassion for their bodies. And in doing so, really hear what the body is trying to tell them. It is not always a signal to do more, right? Healing is not about the doing more just to be doing it, as you mentioned earlier. Sometimes it's really just about listening differently and then taking action from there. And we should be in conversation with our bodies on a regular basis and not ignoring it, not ignoring them. So, Dana, thank you. I would love for you to share how people can get a hold of you if they would like either to have more information or to connect with you.
Yeah, so my book is available right now on Amazon. Unlearn Dis-ease, Relearn Wellbeing. There's the full version book, and then there's a companion workbook for people who want to sort of take all of the suggestions and the practices in there and really like flesh them out and embody them. And then I also do a free healing circle that's on Zoom on the second Wednesday of every month. And that's just talking about kind of Dharma talks, purpose, energy medicine. We do a bit of sound healing and gentle movement. And then anybody that wants to reach me through my website for services, energyovermatter.com. And that's the same handle for all social media platforms.
Wonderful. And I'll make sure to include those in the show notes. All
Thank
right.
you.
And to my audience, if this conversation has resonated with you, I invite you to take a moment to notice what your body is asking of you today. And if you are ready to explore healing in a deeper and more connected way to self and in your nervous system, I invite you to really get in touch, right? You can reach out either to Dayna or you can reach out to myself to find out more about how you can do that. And if you found value in this episode, I invite you to either like, to subscribe, and to share this episode in particular with someone you know who might benefit. And so I think I would love to hear also from you all, to reach out and just share what stood out the most about this conversation. Because I know when I was going on my healing journey 20 years ago, there was not a lot of conversation about what you brought today, Dayna. And people talking about how their life experiences and trauma have affected the body. Now we're hearing more about this 20 years later, but I would have loved to have had these conversations 20 years ago when I started my own journey. And so I invite anyone in the audience who would love to share to definitely reach out to me. Until next time, I hope you all have a beautiful week and a more connected experience with your bodies.